Hey everyone, welcome back to Game Brigade. I am Brian Greer, and today we're going to be doing a review of Ankh, Gods of Egypt. This review will be different than my standard reviews. As you can tell, we're sitting at the computer, so I hope you guys enjoy this review style as we might do this more in the future if you guys like it. Otherwise, stay tuned for more. Let's hit it. Okay, so I mentioned that we're going to be doing a different type of review. As you can see, we're not sitting at the table. Normally in my reviews, we have everything set up on my back table. I've got the whole layout, and I'll do kind of an explanation of how the game works and kind of talk about my thoughts and feelings with the game. I'm going to be trying something completely different. I just played Ankh for the first time this past weekend, and I kind of want to give a first impressions review based on specific mechanics of the game. So I'm not going to cover the whole game, but I'm going to cover specific mechanics and kind of have a discussion with what those mechanics were and how I felt and they're kind of balancing. So if you guys enjoy this, remember to hit the subscribe button, and if you really like this format, smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It really helps support the channel more than you might know. Otherwise, let's go ahead and hit it. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is actually brought up here the Kickstarter page for Ankh. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through different mechanics that the game has and talk about my thoughts and feelings, what they are. And if you have never played Ankh, or if you have received it, I feel like this will be a good way for you to understand. My thought process with this is it'll be a good way for you to understand the core mechanics of the game without having to sit through a 30-minute review, hopefully. So first off, we have the action tracker here. So in the game of Ankh, depending on how many players you have, you'll see that there's 5, 4, 3, or 2. Depending on the player count, you'll place these tokens in a line. When it's your turn, you have the ability to take 2 actions. And every action that you take, if you take one of these top row actions, you have to take an action below it. So it basically forces you that if you do gain followers, you have to do the final one, which is gain Ankh power. So there's a little bit of balancing that and a little bit of interesting play and take. As players move along this track, once you reach the final section here, an event will trigger. So first I'm going to talk about this mechanic in general. I liked the overall aspect of the game in terms of the action selection was interesting. The fact that everything felt limited because you didn't want to entice your opponents to get to this reward, which is a fairly powerful reward if you're able to do it. If you also reach the end of this reward, it ends your turn, which is very important because this top row, which is movement, if at some point you're on this tile, this one where my mouse is, and you take the action to move, your turn's going to be over. So even if you had 2 actions available, you're only going to be able to do the one. So there were moments in the game where we had a token here and no one wanted to do a move action, which really kind of stalled the game out in a negative way, because players, instead of moving across of Egypt and taking more territories and encouraging combat, everyone just sat there because they didn't want to be inefficient. So I thought that was, a negative aspect as well. But again, that could be my player group. I do think that these powers, though, are very powerful. And let's kind of scroll down here and talk about them. So when you reach the end of the track, whoever received the end of the track will take this blue token and move it along this track. This is a track that will kind of end the game and pushes things forward. It's a progression track to keep the game moving forward. The first 3 are these pyramid icons. And basically that means if you are next to a neutral territory, like a pyramid or an obelisk or a temple, and you're the one who triggered it, you will then gain control of those. I personally did not like this mechanic. We played at 5 players, so there might be reasons that at 5 players didn't work, but because of that, it felt like not very many players in the group were able to trigger this, and it seemed like almost at times, maybe based on poor luck or whatever, that similar people were hitting the rewards, and because of that, it really felt like you were behind if you didn't trigger these. And so everyone was kind of trying to race to get to the end and then strategize how they're going to be the one triggering it. And because we're playing with 5 players, sometimes I would look down and say, I know he's going to do this, this, and this, and there's going to be no opportunities for me to get these. And so unfortunately, I never was able to track this. After all 3 of these end things have been hit, as I said here, you will then go to the combat phase. And the combat in this game is a little interesting. So I do have card play next. So in combat, we have cards that are going to be played. Every physical character, every warrior or god, by default is worth 1 point of combat. I want people to be aware that Ankh is not a game where it's an area control game. Just like the 3 games before it, it's an area control game. It uses has combat, and gods are going to be playing a role in it, or in monsters. So in this game, every god or monster, unless stated otherwise, is worth 1 in terms of combat value. You then all have an identical set of cards in your hand that you can play, and they all have a different effect. And this number up in the corner is how much power it's adding towards your combat value. And then you're going to see who wins. I actually liked this mechanic. I thought it was a very interesting mechanic, and it also encourages players to engage in more combat than they normally would, because the only way to get your cards back is cycle of Mahat. I believe it's Mahat. I don't know. So that you're able to play cards, get the rewards, and then you cycle to get back. I felt like this is a very good system for the game. Really enjoyed the overall aspects of it. But the combat in general can leave you feeling a little underwhelmed in terms of it's just so mechanical. It's not very exciting. There's not too much variability. When you play a card as well, they stay in front of you, so you don't get so if I say I play the Plague, that stays in front of me, so everyone knows I've used that card. The only time I get these cards back is if I do a cycle. If you take a look at other games that are in the same kind of theme, like Camel has a kind of a similar play where you're going to be playing cards, but that one you play 2 cards and it has some bluffing, so your opponent doesn't know, and there's a lot more variability, a lot more excitement in the combat. So I do want to say that I think the combat, I like the cycle, the playing the cards, but I feel like the combat was a little weak. Now, add on top of that the powers and effects of the gods. So every god that you choose to play will have its own special ability. And these gods, with their special abilities, can change the outcome of battles either by more power or an effect. I felt that the gods weren't as well balanced as I wanted them to be at different player counts. So I played, I can't remember his name, but he basically, whenever a warrior dies in combat, I can take him and add him to the underworld, and if the player wants to get their warrior back, they have to pay me a follower. Seemed like a really powerful effect. I also get +1 strength for every warrior I have, so I could eventually be up to 4 power with the amount of warriors I could control. But in a 5-player game, it never got to the point where anyone wanted to pay me for a warrior because I would have 1 of each. In a lower player count game, you can actually kind of hurt someone's actual supply because you can target that person specifically. Maybe I own 2 of their warriors, and now their supply from 6 is down to 4, and now that's more incentivized for them to pay me followers. In a 5-player game, no one seemed to really care, especially when you add in monsters, adding in additional characters that people can draw and play with. So overall, the combat system was weak. If we come back up to the top here, after combat, we have Camels, which is the area control section. This was a really cool element in Ankh because the map can be completely changed in the Camel section. Unfortunately, in the playthrough I did, I never got an opportunity again to do any of these and play the Camels. But I do think, so in my games, the people who did them, I don't think did them very strategically and used them very well. They were kind of like, well, we'll just put them here. They didn't really think it through. And they also never really thought through of it didn't seem like a lot of people thought too much of like when they were triggering this, what to do with it. It was kind of, you know, but again, this was a one-time play. I think there's a lot of strategy here, and I actually really like the mechanics of the Camel. And then for an area control game where you can warp the world, it's great. Not Rising Sun, Blood Rage has somewhat similar elements, but not where the players are actually physically changing it. Sections are getting removed and not able to be taken, traveled to. But I really like where the map is physically moving. The next thing I want to talk about are the Ankh powers. So this is the player board here that we'd be taking a look at. And on the player board, you have level 1, level 2, and level 3 Ankh powers. And down here at the bottom of the player board, you will have tokens that you will then fill in these spots. So for level 1, you can have 2 for 2, etc. And then here you have your power, your god power, whatever that may be. When we come back up here for the action, one of the actions that it's cut out here at the very bottom is gain an Ankh power. So that's where you would take a token from here, pay a follower, that's what this recounts, and then place a token here. If you uncover this one right here, and you pay the 1, you can then also gain a monster. Now, this is important because there are a limited amount of monsters in the game based on the player count. Now, we did not play this game with the catch-up mechanic monster. We played it just a base game rules, and I found that whoever goes first and continually takes the Ankh power, they will never not be taking the monster. And if you are behind, if you notice that you are not going to be able to catch up because of the Ankh power, it's a feel bad experience to take these and not gain the benefit of the monster. So, for example, let's say this monster was taken, all the level 1s were taken, I'm the 4th player, and I also want to take an Ankh power because some of these powers are beneficial. They are static effects. They might affect the board when I do something. Knowing that everyone else gained an additional monster that has a bonus effect with it and I don't is really poorly done, in my opinion. And they try to balance it with the first player token in terms of whoever's in last place should be going first. But we got to a point where it never really mattered because if you were behind, you didn't really want to keep chasing the powers because you'd rather be doing other things because you're not getting the incremental power. So, for example, in my game, I never got a single monster, and I did do both level 1 and level 2 Ankh powers. But once both monsters, because they unlock in the first section, level 3, both of them were taken, I really didn't want to keep chasing more Ankh powers, having to pay things to fill these out. It just wasn't very beneficial for me, and I felt like it swinged the game very heavily in favor to whoever got especially level 3 monsters. The level 3 monsters, the one we played with gave +2 for every god that was in battle. So if you had a situation where there was 2 gods, he was so incredibly strong that it almost always guaranteed he would be the victor of that game, unless you had some sort of plague card or something to wipe the board. So that was unfortunately a bad thing. The other thing I want to talk about the Ankh powers are some of them were more beneficial than others. So in a 5-player game, we definitely had everyone at least got level 2 Ankh powers, and we saw that people were copying or mimicking the exact same power. We all took the one that gave us an additional follower when we did the thing, and so when you have it where players are always doing the same ones, it kind of reduces a little bit of that asymmetry that you're hoping for in a war strategy game. You're kind of hoping that people can take on different types of strategies. And I wonder that because of the way other games work, where you can kind of I keep saying Rising Sun, where Blood Rage lets you draft a deck, and you can kind of make a archetype with those. You really just have your god with your single power, and it's hard to really want to make an archetype because everyone has the exact same ability other than your god's specific ability. So it's not as much of wanting to build an archetype as much of maybe taking the best possible stuff at that time. Again, played once, not sure if it's for the best, but that was something I noticed. So I didn't talk about it just now, or I just kind of did talk about it rather. I have something here just for random stuff, just to give you some reference photos. Monsters. So I do feel like the monsters, with the current way the game's made, can create some imbalancing. But I do think that there are enough monsters in the game, which I really do appreciate, that changes kind of the texture of the game or how the game will feel every time you play it. So that I do really appreciate personally. So I wanted to make sure I had that. I already talked about camels as well. So the final thing, what I'd like to try next, the Pharaoh's expansion. I did have this selected. I'm hoping that when we include this, it's going to add a little bit more variety to the gameplay. Things felt a little static at times. Oh, I didn't talk about the god merging. We'll talk about that as well. And so that is what we're going to include next. But let's go up back to the merge. So if we scroll back up here, back to the event track, once you get to this point, players merge. Now, this is a very specific mechanic to Ankh, and it was a very divisive mechanic once the game hit Kickstarter, where the last two players would merge into a single god, and then they would share a turn. And I believe each one gets one action. So you're still getting two actions, but each player just gets one action to use. I love the theme of it. I love the idea of this, because Ankh is set in a world where Egypt is going from a polytheistic society where multiple gods are worshipped into a monotheistic, I can't say the word very well, where it's going to be just one god. They're transitioning in the period, and through this, the gods are working. And so as a last-ditch attempt, two gods are going to kind of combine into a powerful god to try to win favor of the people. Thematically speaking, it is great. But play-wise, I didn't like where we had to take whoever was in this case, fourth place, had to go all the way back on the track to fifth place. And I don't think I can show you. I wish I could show you. Here we go. This is a perfect example. This is the devotion track. So whoever's in last place, whoever's the one above, is going to take their tile all the way back to wherever they are, and now that's their new starting point. This is important to note, though, because you see that these are all in red, and these ones are in blue. Whoever's the first player to reach here will then win. But if you notice these are in red, if we come back up here to the track, the next section, we have a camel section, then one more scoring section with the pyramids, then you eliminate gods in red. In the game we played, the last place player, unfortunately, kind of got hammered down. They lost two skirmishes pretty poorly and weren't able to get many points. While everyone else was kind of, cruising around here. The fourth place player had to go back many steps. And there was no way, no matter what they did, to recover the amount of points needed to get to the blue, where they would not get eliminated based on the game just playing normally. Let me try to find what I'm talking about again. I probably can't find it. Right here. By the time you hit this section. So it effectively, this eliminate gods in red, which again, I like the idea of the gods being cold because of the theme of the game. But it basically, as soon as this merge happened, we knew both players were effectively out of the game, and there was nothing they could do as we rounded this last stretch. And at this point, we were in a point where the players at the top were so far ahead, and because they had the god powers, or not the god powers, the monster powers, as well as the level 3 powers, there was just no way of ever catching up. So that was unfortunate. Now, I do know that there's a catch-up mechanic built in the game with that additional monster, which we did not play with. I think I don't know if it's this guy. There's a guy that does that mechanic. And so I don't know if that's a thing, but I'm interested in checking it out. So that basically wraps up this quick review. Let me know what you guys think. I'm basically breaking down the key mechanics of the game. You know, really the most important parts of the game I talked about. This is the stuff you're going to be doing when you're playing this game. Is it something you like? Is it worth your time? If you haven't opened your pledge, is this something that you are willing to want to play? Personally, I liked Ankh. I liked the theme. I liked the gameplay. I didn't like some of the mechanics. And I think you guys can tell how I feel with those mechanics. They were a little clunky for me. I want to see if the Pharaoh expansion freshens it up, cleans it up. I don't know if that will happen, but I'm very curious. My player group, I would say, was lukewarm to warm with the reception of this game. Even the player who won, who dominated us, he told us tonight at the game night that he would never ask to play Ankh. He wouldn't say no if someone wanted to play Ankh. He just would never be excited or would request it. That really kind of puts red flags up for me. You know, I want games that are really exciting for players. So for me, on my rating scale, I put this in a 7, a low 7s, maybe like a 7.2. But based on my player group, it's going to be most likely in the 6s at some point. If you need to review my scoring stuff, it's all down below. You can check my whole spiel on what I do with scoring. So 7.2 is where I feel like personally where it's going to be as a played it once score. Now, again, there's more gods I haven't played. There's more expansions I haven't touched. But for a first-time experience, playing this game with and also 5 players, which I don't think is the optimal player count, I'm giving this a 7.2. Hopefully that helps you guys if you're making any decisions regarding Ankh. Again, I really enjoyed it myself. There were feel bad moments that I didn't care for, but I'm hoping they can maybe be resolved with additional expansions or better understandings of how the game works and maybe better strategy. So this will wrap up this quick review. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, remember to leave a subscription and a like for the YouTube algorithm. It greatly supports the channel. We've been trying to hit 100 likes on every video, so you know what to do. Help me out. Please smash that like button. Otherwise, leave a comment down below. Biggest question of the day: what do you think of this review style? Is it better or is it worse? Do you not care? It's easier for me to make a review like this when it's a Kickstarter game, in my opinion. So take that into consideration when you're making your comment. Let me know, because I make the channel for you. All right, talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.